Hello everyone, a very good morning and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. Welcome to the daily Hindu news analysis. So let's begin today's discussion by first looking at the topics we are going to discuss. From today's newspaper, I have chosen 6 important articles. 3 of them are for a detailed analysis for the mains examination. I have picked 3 important columns and we have 3 more articles that are relevant for the prelims examination. So let's discuss all these articles in complete detail, and if you're liking these initiatives, do support us by pressing the like button, share your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And also remember, as soon as the session ends, we have a quiz on our Telegram channel regarding these topics. So do head to the Telegram channel after the session so you can revise these articles again. So let's get started with the first article from page number 8 that focuses on India's mining policy. This article is a very lengthy article in today's newspaper, and trust me, it's worth paying attention to this topic. There are a number of important points to be discussed based on this article. So let's take a look at the ongoing changes and shift in India's mining policy. The topic is very important for Indian economy. First, let's understand the context. Why is this topic in news? The mining policy of India is in news because recently the law that regulates mining in the country has been amended by the Indian Parliament. In the ongoing monsoon session, the Mines and Minerals Development and Regulation Amendment Bill 2023 has been passed by both the houses of the Parliament. This introduces few landmark changes in India's mining policy that could transform the Indian economy and could also strengthen India's national security in the coming years. Some very important changes are being done to promote private sector investment and participation, especially with regard to mineral exploration. See, when it comes to mining of key resources, there are different stages involved before the ore can actually be mined. The first stage is reconnaissance, where you have to explore the resources present in the country through geological studies, mapping, surveys, etc. Then you conduct a prospecting exercise. You try to determine what quantity of resources are present. Is it viable for commercial exploitation? So based on these basic exploratory activities that involves reconnaissance, prospecting, etc., finally you take up mining, which provides for commercial exploitation of the resource. So India has done quite well when it comes to bulk resources that are available, such as coal, iron ore, etc. But with regard to critical minerals, critical strategic minerals, and as well as with regard to deep-seated minerals, India has been lagging behind. We have not been able to exploit critical resources, critical strategic minerals and deep-seated minerals, thus causing India to depend on imports in these key sectors. This import dependency of India is a strategic weakness for the economy and also for the country's national security. And also in the mining sector, private sector participation is very limited because the sector has been dominated by government entities. Government institutions almost have a monopoly in different stages of mining because of the restrictive laws and policies that were in place. Now with this amendment, the legislation is being reformed, it's being updated to attract more private investment and to encourage private participation in mining, particularly in mineral exploration. One of the biggest changes being carried out by the bill is that 6 minerals are being listed as critical and strategic minerals. Until now, these minerals, you can see the list of minerals over here, they were classified as atomic minerals. Is that clear? This included beryl and beryllium, lithium, niobium, titanium, tantalum, and zirconium. These critical minerals were previously listed as atomic minerals, and as a result, they were restricted only to government-owned entities. as they were classified as atomic minerals, exploring and mining these 6 minerals was restricted only to government entities. Now, the government is providing a separate categorization. These 6 important minerals are being listed as critical and strategic minerals as they are vital for the economy and national security of India. This allows greater private sector participation as well, and this is one of the big changes being done through the amendment bill. So it's in this context that we should further understand the mining policy of India. We should dive deep into this topic, not only look at the features of this amendment bill, but also talk about the resources present in India. What is India's import dependency on other countries when it comes to critical strategic minerals? What were the drawbacks in the previous law and how these changes are going to help to completely transform the mining sector in the country. So let's start by taking a look at some of the key provisions of the amendment bill. Let's see what new changes are being introduced by the amendment bill. See, under the previous act, the Mines and Minerals Act, mining activities were categorized into 3 stages. The first stage is always reconnaissance, where initial preliminary exploration and survey is conducted to identify and scout for the presence of resources. Following reconnaissance, the second stage is prospecting, where an in-depth exploration study is conducted to locate and identify the resource, the quality of the resource present, and the viability of its economic exploitation. So based on reconnaissance and prospecting, finally the last stage is taken up, which is commercial mining, the commercial exploitation of the resource by extracting these minerals. So these are the 3 stages in mining that were recognized by the Act. Now the problem was, under the previous law, certain activities in mineral exploration were restricted and prohibited, especially under reconnaissance. As part of reconnaissance operations, the previous Act allowed only for aerial surveys, geophysical studies and geochemical surveys to be conducted. It had prohibited pitting, trenching, drilling and subsurface excavation, all of which are crucial to identify the presence of a resource. Largely on environmental grounds and social grounds, these activities, which are supposed to be an intrinsic part of reconnaissance and exploration, were prohibited under the Act. Now, through the amendment, the bill allows for these prohibited activities. Essentially, it is simplifying mineral exploration. It is allowing certain essential activities to be taken up, such as trenching, drilling, and subsurface excavation, along with aerial mapping, geophysical, geochemical surveys, so that exploration becomes more simpler and reconnaissance can be enabled even by the private industry. This is one of the big changes being introduced. Under reconnaissance stage, some of the prohibited activities are being allowed through the amendment. So this simplifies the process of exploration and makes it easier to scout for resources present in the country. Next, when it comes to giving licenses for these different stages of mining, the procedures are being simplified. When it comes to awarding reconnaissance license, prospecting license and mining license, this entire process is being relaxed and it's being made more simpler, especially with focus on exploration license. The focus is on the very first stage of mining, because in India, even though we have plenty of natural resources, we still haven't explored much of the resources present in the country. According to reports, hardly 10% of India's potential has been explored. So without initial stages of exploration, without enough reconnaissance and prospecting, how will you take up mining and how will you exploit the resources present in the country? So the government is simplifying the grant of exploration license, the very first stage in mining, to attract private sector investment and even draw foreign investment into the country in the mining sector to scale up mining exploration activities. But the biggest change of all is the listing of minerals under the 7th schedule of the Act. There are 29 minerals that are specified under this law, and 6 of them are being categorized as critical strategic minerals. Please make a note of this point. It's very, very important. Previously, under the Act, they were classified as atomic minerals, and as a result, their exploration and mining was restricted only to government entities. Going forward, the exploration and mining of lithium, niobium, titanium, tantalum or tantalum, zirconium, since they will fall under critical strategic category, even private sector industries will be allowed to explore and mine these resources. It will no longer be the monopoly of government institutions. Along with that, other deep-seated minerals which are difficult to mine, which are expensive to mine, such as gold, silver, copper, cobalt, nickel, lead, and several other minerals are listed and accordingly categorized to simplify the process of exploration and mining. Now, let's understand what is India's import dependency when it comes to critical strategic minerals. I'll also explain what exactly are critical strategic minerals. We'll also talk about rare earth elements, and we'll also understand what do you mean by deep-seated minerals. These are the 3 categories of minerals that you should be familiar with. You should know what are rare earth elements or rare earth minerals. You should know what are critical strategic minerals and deep-seated minerals. When it comes to the future of the global economy, there is going to be a lot of dependency on these types of minerals. Since countries are planning to achieve net zero emissions as part of their climate action goals, and they are transitioning towards clean renewable energy, the demand for some of these minerals is going to skyrocket. For example, take lithium, which is also known as white gold. It's being referred to as the gold or oil of the future, because lithium is critical for lithium-ion batteries, which is required to power your electric vehicles and also to store energy which is generated through renewable sources like solar, wind, etc. So lithium has already become a critical resource, and these are called critical resources because they are found in very few countries, and they are widely used for strategic applications. Their concentration is limited to few regions of the world. Few countries have a dominance in mining critical strategic minerals, and it's called a strategic mineral because it is used in a number of strategic sectors, including electronics, semiconductors, defense, space, etc. So since these minerals find such critical applications in the economy and even with regard to a country's security, they become strategic minerals. And they are critical because they will be the lifeline of the economy, and they are found only in few countries, and few countries have a dominating influence in mining and supplying these minerals. So semiconductor industry, electronics, defense, aerospace, telecommunication, even healthcare, many key sectors will be dependent on such minerals. Then you have your rare earth elements. Rare earth elements and other key minerals like cobalt, graphite, all these minerals are going to be critical for the clean energy transition that the world is planning. To achieve net zero emissions, to bring down our greenhouse gas emissions, our dependency on such minerals is going to increase in order to transition to clean renewable energy. Now, if you look at the availability, there is a lack of availability of such minerals in the world because the concentration is limited to few regions, few geographical locations, and this creates import dependency for certain countries which don't have the resource or which haven't explored the potential of the resources present in their country. So those countries will have to depend on others to supply the resource. That creates an import dependency in a strategic area. Those countries will become vulnerable to supply chain disruptions. If the countries that have a dominating influence in mining and supplying these minerals, if they can restrict the supply, or if there is an external shock due to economic collapse, due to war, due to a pandemic, the supply chains will be disrupted, thereby affecting the import dependent countries. This is the reason why a country like India has to scale up its mining preparedness. Is that clear? Especially China has a very high degree of control when it comes to some of these key minerals. Take cobalt for example. Cobalt is indeed a very important mineral, and China has almost 70% control over the world's cobalt mining and supply. Most of the cobalt resources are concentrated in one African country, that is DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is currently going through a civil war. So here China and Chinese companies have won most of the contracts and licenses, and thus China controls 70% of the global cobalt market by exercising its dominance in the Democratic Republic of Congo. China has one of the largest reserves of rare earth elements, followed by Vietnam, Brazil and Russia. Rare earth elements are another category of elements. They largely belong to the lanthanide series in the periodic table, and you have 17 elements listed under this category. I have given the entire table over here. It gives you the list of 17 rare earth elements, and some of them are critical in certain industries. You can please go through the names of these rare earth elements. They find critical applications in semiconductor industry, electronics industry, in defense and aerospace. So they find a lot of applications in the economy, and some of the minerals are crucial for a country's national security as well. Now, if you look at the rare earth element distribution and concentration, China is right at the top. China largely controls the world's rare earth element supplies, with other countries like Vietnam, Brazil and Russia that are placed behind China. Now, India also has a decent amount of rare earth elements, but the problem is we haven't explored enough. We haven't explored our true potential, and we haven't started exploiting these resources commercially like China has done. This is what creates an import dependency for India. We become dependent on other countries because we haven't fully explored and exploited the resources and the potential that is present in the Indian subcontinent. So this is where the policy, the amendment which has been done, it seeks to change the course of India's policy to ensure that India can become a little self-sufficient and reduce its import dependency. Now please look at some of the important statistics that I am going to point out. It will help you understand the extent of India's import dependency on the supply of critical minerals from other countries. In fact, it's not just India. Even many developed countries as well, like United States, United Kingdom and the European Union, even they have become heavily dependent on the supplies of China, Australia, Brazil and other countries. When it comes to rare earth elements, critical strategic minerals, deep-seated minerals, these are the countries which are the biggest suppliers. China, Australia, Brazil, many African countries, even Russia to an extent, Vietnam, they have a higher degree of control on these supply chains, and others like US, UK, India, they're all dependent on these imports. So recently, all these import dependent countries have learnt a very important lesson. That is, they can't depend on others for critical supplies. The pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war, both these events disrupted global supply chains. The COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdowns disrupted the global supply chains, which was further disrupted by the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Because of this massive disruption of global supply chains, the supply of critical strategic minerals was affected and disrupted for many powers and many key countries such as US, European countries and even for India. So as a result, these countries are trying to focus on building supply chain resilience. US, UK and European countries, they are coming together, these Western allies are coming together to reduce their import dependency and to increase the resilience of global supply chains. They're trying to form their own parallel supply chains. India is also not far behind. India also has aligned with Japan and Australia to build supply chain resilience through the Supply Chain Resilience Initiative. These like-minded countries of the Indo-Pacific, that is India, Japan and Australia, have launched the Supply Chain Resilience Initiative. We are also working with groupings like the Quad or the Quadrilateral. We are also working through I2U2 Summit. And we are trying to build resilience in global supply chains with these like-minded countries. At the Quad grouping, we are working with the US, Japan and Australia. At I2U2, we are working with the UAE, then United States and Israel to build supply chain resilience. India has also joined the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, which is a US initiative. And even this focuses on building supply chain resilience in the Indo-Pacific. So all these global initiatives are being taken through India's foreign policy. So similarly, we need to upgrade and change our domestic policies as well to create that resilience in our supply chains, to reduce our import dependency. According to the Ministry of Mines, there are 30 minerals that have been listed as critical for the country's economic development and national security. This list was recently published by the Ministry of Mines in the month of June. In June 2023, the Ministry of Mines has come out with a list of 30 critical minerals that are going to be the backbone of the Indian economy and India's national security. But the problem is that in almost all these minerals, we are heavily import dependent as of now. Majority of these minerals are imported. We haven't explored enough and we don't have enough resources in some categories. So India is heavily dependent on imports. For example, we have a near 100% import dependency with regard to critical strategic minerals. When it comes to lithium, cobalt, nickel, niobium, beryllium and tantalum, we have a near 100% import dependency. We largely import these critical strategic minerals from China, Russia, Australia, South Africa, US and few other countries. Is that clear? So we are trying to work closely with some of the friendly countries to secure our global supplies while trying to find these resources within India as well by upgrading our mining policy. We are trying to promote exploration within the country. That is why the rules related to mineral exploration is being simplified through this amendment bill. See, globally, we have tied up with South American countries as well, such as Peru, Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil. All these Latin American countries, they are blessed with many of these critical minerals resources. Like lithium, for example, is found in very large quantities in the lithium triangle. In the lithium triangle that you find in South America, that covers some of these countries. So India is working with these countries through diplomatic measures and we are trying to secure stable supply chains for India. But again, this is not enough. We can't always be import dependent. So along with securing the global supplies, we have to scout for these resources within the country because we haven't explored our true potential. And recently we have discovered initial deposits to be present in Jammu and Kashmir. In fact, this was one of the big breaking news in India in the last few months. Many of you would be aware of this, that India has struck a massive resource apparently in Jammu and Kashmir, and in the initial stages of exploration, a large lithium resource has been identified. So this has to be taken forward. Further studies have to be conducted, further exploratory prospecting exercises have to be done before we consider commercially mining these resources. Because mining is not an easy task, it's a very challenging exercise. If you explore 100 areas, you can start mining only in maybe one or two of those areas. Because not in every region you will have commercially viable resources present. Right? It depends on the quality of the ore, the concentration of the ore, and how much of it can be commercially exploited. So if you conduct around 100 exploration exercises, finally you can mine maybe in just one or two places. That is the success rate in mining. So the key here is to increase exploration. So government alone cannot do this. That is the reason why private sector participation is being encouraged through the latest amendment. Is that clear? So India finding lithium reserves in J&K was a big find. So there could be other places in the country as well where similar resources could be present, and further exploration could set the stage for large-scale commercial exploitation that could reduce our dependency on other countries. Right now we have almost 100% import dependency with regard to critical strategic minerals. Now coming to deep-seated minerals. What are deep-seated minerals? Deep-seated minerals are those minerals which are very difficult and expensive to explore and mine. They are present in decent quantities in certain regions, but the problem is they are very difficult to explore and it's very expensive to mine such resources. It's not economically viable. So this includes gold, silver, copper, zinc, lead, nickel, cobalt, platinum group of elements, and even diamonds. Alright, so here as well India has a deficiency. We import most of our deep-seated minerals as well. We haven't explored enough. We haven't put that initial effort needed to identify the resources present within our own country. India has done decently well with regard to superficial or bulk minerals like coal, iron, etc., manganese, bauxite and the others. But when it comes to critical strategic minerals and deep-seated minerals and rare earth elements, we are lagging behind. See, if it's naturally not found in India, then there's nothing we can do about it, right? We can't go and alter geography. That is something which is part of India's destiny. But we have to fully explore the resources that are present in the country. There should be a thorough exploration through both government and private participation, and this could help us in reducing the scale and extent of import dependency. Now take for example India's dependency on other countries for copper. Copper is a very important mineral for various key sectors, including strategic sectors. But India, which is not blessed with enough resources, we haven't explored as well, and we continue importing around 12 lakh tons of copper, which amounts to around 27,000 crore rupees as of 2022-23. Even with regard to copper, with regard to cobalt, lithium and all these key minerals that we are talking about, we have a lot of import dependency. So India's focus is on opening up the sector for private participation. Because India is indeed blessed with a unique geography. India is a land of resources. We do have enough resources, and the geological tectonic evidence points towards that. If you go back to the Gondwana land mass that existed, where the Indian subcontinent was part of one large land mass connected with Africa and Australia, right? Now today, in Western Australia and in Eastern Africa, if you can find massive resources, and if those countries are exploiting it, there's no reason why those resources can't be found on the Indian subcontinent, right? Because geological evidence, tectonic evidence indicates that Indian subcontinent was indeed part of the same land mass, the Gondwana land mass. The subcontinent broke apart from today's East Africa and Western Australia, and we can be fairly sure that some of these resources are found in the Indian subcontinent as well. But what we need is further exploration to look for critical strategic minerals, to look for rare earth elements. And that is the reason why we have to prioritize mineral exploration, the very first stage in mining. Is that clear? We have to prioritize reconnaissance and prospecting. And this is exactly what the amendment bill is trying to do. Is that clear? Under the UN framework for classification of resources, there are 4 stages in mineral exploration. Please make a note of this, very important for your prelims. There are 4 stages recognized by the UN as far as mineral exploration is concerned. This includes reconnaissance, which is the first step. Then prospecting, you prospect the extent, the amount of resources present. Then you carry out a general exploration followed by a detailed exploration. These are the 4 globally recognized stages in mineral exploration. Once these exploratory exercises are completed through aerial mapping, through geophysical surveys, through drilling, through subsurface excavation, all these methods and tools and technologies are used in exploration. Once exploration is completed, we get to know where the resources are found, what kind of resources are present, what is the concentration, what is the quality, is it commercially viable to exploit it. With all these details, then you begin your mining exercise. Then you auction the licenses. You invite private companies, invite foreign investment, or push government entities and give licenses to them to start the commercial exploitation. But in India, the biggest roadblock was the strict regulations that were present in the exploration phase itself. In the very first stage of mining, we had a lot of roadblocks, like the 6 critical strategic minerals, like lithium, tantalum and others. They were listed as atomic minerals. Now that is being declassified and they will be listed separately as critical strategic minerals, which will allow for private sector participation as well. According to the Ministry of Mines, India has just explored around 10% of its obvious geological potential. Is that clear? We have explored only 10% of our true potential. Still 90% of the area is yet to be exploited and we are mining less than 2% of this. In fact, our mining budget is just a small fraction of what the world is spending on mining. If you take India's expenditure on mining exploration, it is less than 1% of the global mineral exploration budget. So clearly there is a lot of room for India to expand, to further push mineral exploration across the country, and this cannot be done just by the government. It cannot be done just by public sector organizations. You require private sector participation along with attracting foreign investments. As of now, there is very little private sector participation because exploration is largely led by Geological Survey of India, Atomic Energy Minerals Directorate. So such government entities and few public sector units, only they are involved in mineral exploration as of now. Problem is, public sector units can be inefficient. They may not have the right technology. They might be suffering from various administrative challenges, red tapeism, corruption. So to bring efficiency into the field, to bring better technology, you have to encourage private sector participation. Until now, in the key sectors, in the critical mining sector, greenfield exploration was prohibited for private sector, right? Greenfield projects which start from the scratch, where exploration begins from the scratch, this was kept monopolized by public sector units. The government had kept it as a monopoly of only government entities. So now the amendment bill is throwing up the sector of mineral exploration and encouraging private participation to scout for critical strategic minerals and deep-seated minerals in the country. This is where the amendment bill is making a big departure, and this indicates a major shift in India's mining policy. So let us sum up what we have discussed. The previous act, the Mines and Minerals Act of 1957, this was the law regulating mining in India. It was seen as inadequate to boost private sector participation, and hence the government has amended the law through the latest bill. The bill has been enacted by the Parliament and key changes are being introduced with regard to mining and mineral exploration in the country. Is that clear? One of the big changes is that as far as mineral exploration is concerned, under the stages of reconnaissance and prospecting, several prohibited activities are being allowed. Activities such as pitting, trenching, drilling, subsurface excavation, which was prohibited, this is being allowed along with aerial surveys, geophysical surveys and geochemical surveys. This will bring the right technology and the right processes and tools through which the entities can explore the resources present in India. Next, along with existing licenses, under the current act, there were 3 types of licenses given. There was a reconnaissance license for initial exploration, a prospecting license for the next stage of exploration, and finally a mining lease, which would be given usually by state governments through auction route. Along with these existing leases and licenses, a new license is being introduced called exploration license that combines retrospecting, reconnaissance and prospecting both the activities will be allowed through a single license for boosting mineral exploration in the country. So private sector organizations which are going to get involved, they need not seek out multiple licenses. A single unified exploration license will be given that will allow for reconnaissance and as well as prospecting, that covers two important stages of mineral exploration. Previously, critical minerals that were listed as atomic minerals that were restricted only for government entities, they are being delisted, denotified and being separately listed as critical strategic minerals. That is another big change which is being done. Then with regard to the grant of license, the area which can be explored, even here a lot of relaxations are being provided. The exploration license which I was mentioning, right, it will be granted by the state government through a auction process, through a competitive bidding process. The central government will prescribe the details as to how the auction has to be done in a fair and transparent manner to prevent any corruption. And state governments will follow these norms to grant the exploration license that will cover both reconnaissance and prospecting. So companies need not get separate licenses for reconnaissance and prospecting. They can get a combined exploration license through the state governments through the auction process. The license will be given for a 5-year period. The license will be given for a 5-year period, thus giving greater window of opportunity for the companies to explore. It's being made easier to extend the license as well by another 2 years if necessary. And the most important change is that the area for exploration was previously restricted to 25 square kilometers for a single reconnaissance permit. If a reconnaissance permit was given, it was given only for a maximum of 25 square kilometers. This is a very, very small area to explore. This could never yield results. Right now, this is being increased to up to 1,000 square kilometers. In a single exploration license, up to 1,000 square kilometers, reconnaissance and basic exploration can be carried out to increase the chances of finding these key resources. Then also with regard to submission of reports, there are some progressive changes being made which will make it easier for the private sector companies to invest in the area, and they're also being incentivized. They're being incentivized where the government will provide subsidies and easier credit in order to encourage the private sector to invest more in mineral exploration. So these are the big changes that are being brought about by the latest amendment which has been done to the Mines and Minerals Act of 1957. Is that clear? This clearly indicates a shift in India's mining policy, and that is why the topic is very, very important for your mains exam. We've also identified some important prelims facts, so you can expect some prelims questions as well on rare earth elements, critical strategic minerals, etc. Is that clear? Now let's move on to the next topic. We have 3 articles in today's newspaper that focuses on superconductors. Another important topic in science and technology and also with regard to economy. There are 3 articles. We have an editorial on page number 6. We have a infographic along with some important data points on page number 7 related to superconductors, and also on the last page of the online edition on page number 18 we have an article that helps you identify what exactly is a superconductor, what are the properties, what are the features of a superconducting material. So let's club all these articles together and have a detailed discussion on superconductors. First, let me tell you why the topic is in news, why there is such extensive coverage of superconductors. In fact, this topic has hit global headlines because recently in South Korea, there was a very, very big announcement. A team of South Korean researchers, they announced that they have found and developed a new material that they have named as LK99. It's a new type of material that they have developed, and they are claiming that this is a superconducting material which can operate at room temperature and at ambient pressure. That is, in regular normal conditions, in regular room temperature and pressure conditions, this particular material, which has been named as LK99, it can apparently work as a superconductor according to the team of South Korean researchers. If this is verified independently, if this is scientifically established, this would be one of the biggest scientific breakthroughs of the decade or maybe of the century itself. Because a superconducting material that can operate at regular room temperature and pressure conditions is going to revolutionize the economy and the industry. It has many economic and strategic applications across various industries. So let's understand what exactly is superconductivity. What is a superconductor? A superconductor, as the name itself indicates, is such a material which has zero electrical resistance. There are 4 properties based on which you can identify whether a material is a superconductor or not. First is based on its electrical resistance. Second, it's based on its magnetic properties. Third, it's based on its thermodynamic properties, how it behaves under thermal expansion. And fourth, it's based on its spectroscopic properties. These are the properties or features that determine whether a material, a given element or a material, is a superconductor or not. Now see, every material has a certain degree of electrical resistance. That is, when electricity flows through a certain material, right, there is a certain resistance offered to the flow of electricity, which is what causes losses in the transmission of electricity. Now imagine if there is a material with zero electrical resistance, which means there is no loss of electricity during transmission. If electrical resistance vanishes in a particular material, then you can transmit electricity without any transmission loss. This will revolutionize the world of electronics, the world of electrical engineering, and all the other connected industries. So it is possible to find such materials with zero electrical resistance, but currently our understanding is that such superconductors are found, or they function like this, only under extremely low temperatures. You can't find superconductivity in regular normal room temperature and room pressure conditions. Only under critical temperature, critical pressure conditions can you witness superconductivity as of now. Is that clear? So electrical resistance would be almost zero and the magnetic fields will be expelled from the material in a superconductor state. Magnetical resistance would be expelled at this state. But right now these materials, right, they can operate like this or they can be found with these properties only at extremely low temperatures, which is not possible to achieve in a real world. In our day-to-day life, in our day-to-day functioning, right, if you have to make use of this material everywhere, in all devices, gadgets, right, you can't make them function because you can't create such critical temperature, critical pressure conditions. So the breakthrough we are looking for from many decades is for a material which can display these properties, superconducting properties, at normal room temperature, room pressure condition. Is that clear? A superconductor also has a very unique thermal expansion property. It has unique spectroscopic properties. So based on these features and properties, a material is classified as a superconductor. But the bottom line is that a superconductor is such a material which is offering zero electrical resistance to the flow of electrons through the material. As of now, the hurdle, the roadblock is that such kind of materials display superconductivity only at extremely low temperatures and critical pressure conditions, which is not possible to achieve in the normal world, in the day-to-day world. You can create that in a lab, but you can't build devices from that, you can't make gadgets from that. Correct? So the world is hunting for such a material, trying to find or develop such a material which can display these properties under normal room temperature and pressure conditions. That is when you will have real world application of superconductivity and superconductors. Let me tell you what the applications are. Superconductors will find a variety of applications across multiple industries. For example, in the medical industry, your MRI scanners and various medical equipment and devices, they can be made more efficient, more effective by using superconductivity, by using superconducting materials. Same with connectivity, transportation, scientific research, industrial activities, energy production and energy supply, that is energy transmission. All these sectors will undergo a radical transformation. In fact, superconductors, they are on the same level of that of quantum computing. If you want a comparison, just like quantum computers can revolutionize the world of computing, superconductors can revolutionize the world of materials. Right? If such a material is found or developed, right, imagine there will be no power loss in transmission. You can solve the global energy problem. You can come out with efficient semiconductors, produce better chips, and thereby make electronics, then even defense equipment, space applications, they can all be made more energy efficient, right? So there are numerous applications, from aerospace to power transmission to various industrial applications, even with regard to magnetic levitation for high-speed railway network and transportation, for particle research accelerators, right? There are numerous areas where superconductors can be deployed that could transform the whole industry, the economy, and this has great significance for the future. So from decades, researchers around the world are hunting for such a material, right? They're trying to either develop it or trying to look for it in natural sources, whether a material can display these properties at normal room temperature. Until now, we haven't seen any success, but we have seen many research teams making these claims before as well. Since this is such a valuable material and since there is such a significance attached with it, in fact, it's a matter of national and scientific prestige, and imagine the economic value and the strategic value of such a discovery, right? If a particular team of researchers or a company or a government, if they were to make the first discovery, or if they were the first ones to develop such a superconducting material, right, they will hold the key to the future. This holds tremendous potential for controlling the economy, for controlling geopolitics as well, right? So many teams which have seen some initial results, they rush to publish without further verification. In the last few decades, we have seen many such claims. This is not the first time that a research team is claiming that they have developed a superconducting material. There have been many such instances, but later scientific verification, independent verification has disproven those theories. That's why the announcement by South Korea's research team has to be taken with a pinch of salt. Right now, this South Korean research team has claimed that this material called LK99 has functioned as a superconductor at normal room temperature and ambient pressure. If true, if it is verified, then this will be one of the biggest breakthroughs. But if not, it will be just another false hope. So that is why there should be more caution according to the editorial. The editorial is urging that scientists are rushing to publish the results given the significance of this development. Given the significance of superconductors, the prestige, the economic strategic value attached to superconductors, researchers and scientists, they often rush to publish their discovery without conducting further checks and verifications. So the editorial is calling for an independent verification of these claims. And in the future, it's urging researchers to be more cautious, more careful, to follow the entire scientific rigor, to follow the due process of scientific discovery before publishing the results. Is that clear? Now please note down for your prelims that this material called LK99, it has been developed by using a copper substituted lead apatite. There could be a factual straightforward question, right? So this superconducting material, which apparently a South Korean team has developed called LK99, it's made of copper substituted lead apatite. Alright, so please make a note. So this is what you should understand about the properties and the applications of superconductors and the significance of this announcement from South Korea. Alright, as of now it's not independently verified. That is why the editorial is calling for a thorough scientific verification of these claims. Alright, so let's move on to the next article from page number 1, that's related to the ongoing crisis in Manipur. As you know, from the last 3 months, Manipur has been devastated by a massive ethnic violence and ethnic conflict that has broken out between the Meiteis and the Kukis. So given the scale of atrocities that have happened from both the sides, there have been rampant killings, there have been rapes, molestations, right? We have discussed the viral video from Manipur, which showed women being paraded naked, raped and molested, and the law and order machinery completely falling apart in Manipur. So the Supreme Court of India has taken note of these disturbing developments, which marks a breakdown of the constitutional order and mechanisms in Manipur. So the Supreme Court has directly stepped in and it has appointed few committees to provide relief to Manipur from the cycle of violence and especially to protect women and to deliver justice to the victims of this violence. So please make a note of these developments. The Supreme Court has appointed a committee that comprises of women judges. 3 former women judges from high courts, they have been drawn by the Supreme Court into this committee to address women's safety and security issues in Manipur. The Supreme Court believes that a panel of retired high court judges comprising of all women judges can provide a healing touch to Manipur in monitoring the relief and rehabilitation efforts, in getting to the bottom of the cases where rape and molestation has been reported, and in delivering justice to the victims. So this judicial committee will play a critical role in addressing the atrocities that have happened in Manipur, particularly against women. Along with this committee, the Supreme Court has directed the DGPs of 6 state governments to name 6 DIG rank officers, senior level IPS officers, who will be given charge of 6 special investigation teams or SITs to independently investigate these cases. Since the judiciary has lost faith in the law and order machinery of Manipur government, it is constituting a SIT under CBI's supervision by drawing officers from other states. Is that clear? Officers from other state police organizations are being drawn by the Supreme Court to establish 6 special investigation teams. Each of them will be headed by high-ranking DIG level IPS officers from different state police forces under the overall supervision of the CBI. CBI's joint director will be leading the investigation by bringing these SITs together from different state police forces. So Supreme Court has asked the DGP of 6 state governments to suggest names of top police officials who can be appointed to head these important investigative teams to investigate all these cases of killings, rapes and molestations. A retired IPS officer, Dattatreya Patsalgikar from Maharashtra Police, is being drawn by the Supreme Court to look into these cases. The overall investigation of all these cases that have been registered, right, they'll take place under the overall supervision of this commission headed by retired IPS officer Dattatreya. CBI will provide the overall supervision and there will be 6 SITs, independent SITs from police officers of different state police organizations. The entire investigation led by these commissions will take place under the direct supervision of the Supreme Court itself. So this is the judiciary's direct intervention, considering the failure of the central government and the state government in curtailing the violence and in delivering justice to the victims. The Supreme Court has criticized the failure of the center, the failure of the Ministry of Home Affairs and the failure of the state government, and it's taken its own initiative to establish these critical commissions that can protect women and as well as and other victims, right, who have suffered, to deliver justice to them, to rehabilitate them. These key commissions have been set up by the Supreme Court. So please make a note of this development. It's a very big development as far as the crisis in Manipur is concerned. So this completes my detailed discussion of the three big articles in today's newspaper. Now let's take a look at the prelims related articles. We have three small articles. On page number 12, we have an article referring to the Malabar Exercise. Malabar Exercise is a very, very important topic under international relations. Malabar Exercise is a multilateral naval exercise that is of great significance for the Indo-Pacific region. So in a few days, the Australian Navy will be hosting the 31st edition of Malabar Exercise. That's why the topic is in news. Starting from August 11th to August 21st. For this period, Australia will be hosting for the first time the Malabar Multinational Naval Exercise off the coast of Sydney. That is off the coast of Sydney in Eastern Australia in the South Pacific. That is where the Malabar Exercise, the 31st edition, will be held. India will be a major participant along with Japan and United States. These are the four countries that are part of the Malabar Exercise: India, Australia, Japan, and the United States. These four countries are part of the Malabar Naval Exercise. Now let me just give you a few points about the history of Malabar Exercise, the background. Malabar Exercise initially began as a bilateral naval exercise between Indian Navy and the US Navy in 1992. Initially, it did not involve Japan and Australia. It was started back in 1992 as a part of the efforts between India and US to normalize their relations. That is after the Cold War came to an end. Because during the Cold War period, India and US were quite hostile to each other. They didn't trust each other. So after the Cold War came to an end, India-US made an attempt to try and build a strategic relationship. And one of the first big steps that was taken was the starting of this naval exercise, which was a bilateral naval exercise between Indian Navy and the US Navy. In 2007, for the first time, we elevated this to a multilateral exercise. The then Manmohan Singh government, which was being pushed by China, Chinese aggression was increasing by 2007-2008 with regard to our border dispute. And given the Chinese pressure tactics, India decided to get closer to like-minded democracies. And for the first time, we elevated Malabar to a multilateral exercise, and we had invited Australia, Japan, and even Singapore to take part in the Malabar exercise. Is that clear? So Japan, Australia, and Singapore were also invited in 2007 by the Manmohan Singh government to take part in that year's Malabar exercise. It was held in the Bay of Bengal. But this angered China. China retaliated against India following the Malabar exercise and put tremendous pressure on India. So in the interest of maintaining India-China relations, India called off the multilateral nature of Malabar exercise and we restored it back to the bilateral format only with the US. We stopped inviting Japan, Australia, and Singapore. It came back to being just a bilateral exercise between India and the US. But in 2015, Japan was re-invited by India and it joined Malabar exercise permanently. Because by then, Chinese aggression against India and Japan had gone up significantly, especially after 2010. China was repeatedly putting pressure on India and Japan with regard to border and maritime disputes. So Japan was invited permanently and Japan joined the Malabar exercise and it became a trilateral exercise. Then finally in 2020, following the Doklam dispute of 2017, following the Ladakh clashes of 2020, India decided to bring Australia back, and Australia also permanently joined the Malabar exercise, and as a result, it has become a quadrilateral exercise today. Is that clear? That's why Malabar exercise is very, very important. Essentially, the Quad members, Quad is just a diplomatic grouping. Please remember, it's not a military grouping. Quad is a diplomatic grouping of India, Japan, Australia, and US to establish rules in the Indo-Pacific. And They are increasing their cooperation in various areas, including economic cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. But the same Quad countries which oppose China's aggression in the Indo-Pacific have this exercise called Malabar, which is a quadrilateral naval exercise between their navies. Alright? So every year the exercise is held. It is hosted by one of the countries, and this year's edition will be hosted by Australia. Immediately after this exercise, AUS Index, which is a bilateral naval exercise between India and Australia, will also take place. Please note this down, another important prelims fact. AUS Index is the name of the bilateral naval exercise between India and Australia. Then Australia has also invited India to the Sea Power Conference, which will take place in November. In November 2023, Australia is hosting a symposium, a conference based on maritime power, and it's called the Sea Power Conference. India also has been invited, and India will be participating in the Sea Power Conference as well. So please note down all these important military exercises and maritime security initiatives, as it's crucial for India's policy towards the Indo-Pacific. Next, on page 12, we have an article that highlights some of India's infrastructure projects in the border areas that have been mentioned by India's Foreign Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar. Dr. S. Jaishankar was talking about India's preparedness with regard to Chinese aggression in the border areas, and he pointed out how previously India was very defensive in its mindset. After the 1962 defeat in the 1962 war, India became very defensive against China, considering that China was a much more superior rival. For almost 4 decades, from 1962 to 2004, right from the Nehru administration till the Vajpayee administration, India had adopted a very defensive policy towards China. The policy was so defensive that India decided not to build infrastructure in the border areas as a military strategy. The fear was, if we create roads, bridges and railway lines near the India-China border, then in case of a war, Chinese forces could exploit our own infrastructure to make deeper inroads into our territory. That was the kind of fear and the negative mindset that perpetuated India's strategic establishment after the crushing defeat in the 1962 war. This defensive mindset with regard to infrastructure creation and modernization of Indian troops prevailed until 2004 for a good 40 plus years. But after that, since the Manmohan Singh government and right now until the Modi government, there has been a major shift. There has been a major shift in India's policy, where India has proactively and aggressively developed infrastructure towards the Chinese border. India has built strategic roads and tunnels. There are strategic railway lines being built. India also has reactivated advanced landing grounds, or ALGs, very close to the disputed border, right? So such connectivity infrastructure has been built up in the last 15 to 20 years, and that's exactly what the Foreign Minister was talking about. So in this discussion, he mentioned some of the key projects of India that improves our connectivity with our other neighboring countries. So I thought I would introduce you to these projects, as they could be very important for the prelims exam. The Foreign Minister has mentioned the IMT Trilateral Highway Project, India-Myanmar-Thailand Trilateral Highway Project. It's a key initiative that was launched under the Look East policy of India, and it is being pursued under the Act East policy of India. The project seeks to connect Moreh, which is a border commercial town in Manipur on the India-Myanmar border, and connects Moreh in Manipur with the key commercial centers of Myanmar, that is Mandalay and Yangon, and this highway will further connect with Mesot in Thailand. This is the IMT Trilateral Highway conceptualized between India, Myanmar and Thailand as part of India's Look East Act East policy. The project has almost reached completion, but it is not fully completed, because the problem is the situation. The political situation in Myanmar has prevented India from fully operationalizing this critical project. This will boost our connectivity with Southeast Asian countries. This will give us direct land access to Cambodia, Vietnam, and even to Malaysia and even Singapore. This project holds a lot of potential for India to step up its economic ties and strategic ties with Southeast Asian countries, But the project has not been fully completed. It's pending even now because of the political crisis in Myanmar. Another similar project with Myanmar is the Kaladan Multimodal Transit Transport Project. It's another ambitious project launched under Look East policy. We are still pursuing it under Act East policy, and even this project has not been completed. It's a multimodal transport project because it involves multiple modes of transportation. The plan is to connect the Kolkata Haldia port in India through a maritime link with the strategic Sitwe port of Myanmar, which India has developed. In fact, recently, just a few months back, this maritime link has been operationalized by India. This connection between Kolkata port and Sitwe port has been activated. And please remember that Sitwe port in Myanmar in the Rakhine state has been built by India with Indian funding and assistance. From here, the plan is to transport the goods through Kaladan River. That's why the project is called Kaladan Project. It's named after the Kaladan River. So through inland navigation for around 158 kilometers on Kaladan River, the goods can be transported inside Myanmar. And finally, there is a highway which has been planned at the last stretch, which will connect with India's Mizoram. Essentially, it will give us another alternate route to access Northeast India. It reduces our dependency on the strategic Siliguri corridor, which is a weakness for India. It's a strategic choke point for India. Right now, the only access for India to the Northeast is via Siliguri corridor, which is a narrow corridor sandwiched between Nepal, Bangladesh and Bhutan. So through Kaladan project, our connectivity with Myanmar will improve, plus we will find a new route to access Northeast India and directly connect with Mizoram. But unfortunately, this part of the project is not complete, especially the highway connecting Mizoram with Myanmar is not complete, again because of the political crisis in Myanmar and the prevalence of organized crime and insurgency along the India-Myanmar border. Next, the Foreign Minister has also mentioned a few other important projects. With Nepal, India is pursuing a very important railway link to connect Roxol in Bihar with Kathmandu through the Terai region, the Terai belt, which binds India and Nepal together. I hope you know that in the Terai region of Nepal, in the plain areas, you have a community called the Madhesis, the Madhes community. Madhesis are very closely linked with families on the Indian side in UP and Bihar. In the border villages of the Terai, Madhesis of Nepal, they marry into Indian families. So there is a marital relationship, a familial relationship between the Madhes community of Nepal and the border villages of UP and Bihar. So to boost people-to-people relations and promote cultural ties and tourism and economic ties, a railway line is being explored between Roxol in Bihar and Kathmandu. This is an ongoing project. And India is also exploring a railway link between Bhutan and Assam to give a boost to tourism and people-to-people relations. This is another proposed project to bring Bhutan closer to India. As of now, Bhutan has no railways. This will be Bhutan's first railway project, right? Bhutan has partially open borders with India. There's only land connectivity for Bhutan. So India is exploring a railway line connecting Assam directly with Bhutan that could improve tourism and also promote people-to-people relations. So these are some important projects that you should be aware of as far as India's foreign policy is concerned. Coming to the last article on page 13, there is a mention of the coup, the military coup that we witnessed recently in Niger. Niger is a major West African country where a democratically elected government has been thrown out by Niger's military, and the military junta has captured power, leading to a civil war-like situation in the country. Now, this is a very distressing development because across West Africa, there have been many such coups in the last few years. There is a lot of political instability which has increased radicalism and created a fertile ground for terrorism. As a result, Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram and other terrorist groups, they are flourishing in this part of Africa, which we call as the Sahel region in Africa. So the West African countries are part of a grouping called ECOWAS. The ECOWAS grouping is deeply concerned about the developments in Niger. It has opposed the military coup, and ECOWAS countries had given a warning to Niger's military leaders to reverse the military coup. They had even given a deadline. And if the military junta does not step away and restore normalcy and democracy back, ECOWAS countries are contemplating economic sanctions along with a possible military intervention to target Niger's military junta. Is that clear? So ECOWAS is a grouping. It's an economic grouping of West African countries. These countries are collectively planning a military intervention along with economic sanctions to punish the military leaders and to throw them out as they are not following the directions and they are not restoring normalcy back in Niger. So as a result, you should be aware of ECOWAS. India has good relations with this grouping and hence it can become very, very important for your prelims. Is that clear? India has some investments in West Africa. We have increased our diplomatic engagement in West Africa and we work closely with a regional grouping called ECOWAS. It's a major economic grouping of West African countries. It stands for Economic Community of West African States, which was established in the year 1975. It's essentially an economic grouping. It aims to erase the borders, promote free movement of people and goods, and it hopes to pool the resources of these countries to build cooperation between them for economic development. The members are Benin, Burkina Faso, Cape Verde, Cote d'Ivoire, Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Senegal and Togo. These are the members of ECOWAS. India actually has decent relations with many of these countries. India is quite close to Senegal, Sierra Leone, Niger, Nigeria and few others. Alright, so please remember the members. What is ECOWAS? When was it established? What is its primary objective? Because the grouping is repeatedly mentioned as a result of the military coup in Niger. So this completes my discussion of today's The Hindu newspaper. Please take up the mains answer writing questions. It's all based on what we have discussed in the first two topics. I expect you guys to write an answer and post the answer in the answer writing portal. Also, don't forget, head to the Telegram channel now because you'll have a quiz on some of these topics which will help you revise these articles. So I hope you guys have enjoyed today's session. I hope you have learnt everything. So do let me know how the session went in your comments and please share the videos with other aspirants as well. So that is it from my side. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.